Welcome to Experts Dispatch, your go to source for in depth discussions on critical national and global issues. I'm Mary Hunter, a visiting research fellow at the Centre for Strategic and Contemporary Research and a PhD graduate from the University of St Andrews. Today, we're discussing the challenges facing religious minorities in Pakistan with Cecil Chaudhry. Pakistan is an ethnically diverse country with a rich history of religious significance and influences encompassing many different faiths. Since Pakistan's inception as a Muslim homeland in 1947, different political leaders and thinkers have envisaged varied relationships between the state and the country's religious minorities or non Muslims and their role within the state. Sadly, it is not unusual to read in the national news about attacks on religious minorities, particularly as a result of allegations of offences relating to religion or so called blasphemy. These offences are often used to settle personal disputes. But issues relating to religious minorities also extend to matters of equality, political representation, and access to justice. Joining me today to discuss this pertinent topic is Cecil S. Chaudhry. Cecil is a dedicated human rights advocate with a focus on South Asia. As the Deputy Team Leader for South Asia at CSW, a leading organisation dedicated to promoting religious freedom and combating discrimination based on beliefs, Cecil played a pivotal role in advocating for the rights of religious minorities in the region. With a strong educational foundation in human rights from the UN Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, Cecil brings a wealth of expertise and a deep understanding of the challenges faced by marginalised communities in South Asia. Firstly, thank you for joining me today, Cecil.
Thank you, Dr. Mary. It's an honor and a pleasure.
So
Thanks a lot.
it's generally said that Pakistan's population is 97% Muslim, leaving a 3% religious minority population. Though this is complicated by the willingness of citizens to participate in the census and also whether the category Muslim should be further divided into Sunni and Shia. Some Muslims themselves tend to prefer the distinction between Muslims and non Muslims than religious majorities and minorities. These different terms have implications for the status, sense of belonging, and rights of religious minorities in Pakistan, in light of both international law and the laws of Pakistan. So I wanted to ask you first, what are the basic constitutional and legal frameworks that are in place for religious minorities in Pakistan?
Thank you, Dr. Mary Hunter, once again. I wish I could say that there are constitutional guarantees and legal frameworks in place. Uh, Unfortunately, while we do have articles and we do have such guarantees enshrined within our constitution, we obviously see a certain lack of implementation or compliance with those guarantees within the Constitution of Pakistan 1973. So, just to run you past some of the most relevant and directly relating to the religious minorities in Pakistan, there are 7 articles in the Constitution, starting with Article 20. Article 20 is the article that guarantees the freedom of religion to all citizens of Pakistan and prohibits discrimination based on religion. It also grants individuals the right to profess, practice, and propagate their religion. Then you have the Article 22 of the Constitution, which is an article that ensures that all citizens have equal access to public offices and the civil service, regardless of their religion or belief. Article 25 is the article that guarantees equal citizenship and rights to all citizens of Pakistan, regardless of their religion, race, caste, or sex. Article 36 is the article that ensures that all that other than Muslims, those other than Muslims also have the right to freely profess and practice their religion and establish and maintain their places of worship. Then you have Article 37, which guarantees that the state shall promote and protect the rights of minorities, including their culture, language, and religion. And lastly, you have Article 38, which ensures that the state shall provide special safeguards to minorities and take measures to protect their legitimate interests. So these are the guarantees in the Constitution that the state and all its institutions must be in compliance with. In addition to these guarantees in the Constitution of Pakistan, there are some additional measures that have taken place in the recent past, I would say more in the last decade or so, starting with the very historic Supreme Court judgment that was issued on the 19th of June 2014 for the protection and promotion of the rights of religious minorities in the country. This was authored by the Justice Tasadduk Hussain Jilani, who was the Chief Justice of Pakistan at the time. And it was something that the religious minorities really were encouraged by this judgment that came forward. It had it was nothing new, but it was re-emphasizing all these guarantees that I just spoke about in the Constitution, and ensuring that through that order, these guarantees are complied with, and religious minorities in the country, their rights are protected and promoted within Pakistan. So that, unfortunately, I would just like to also mention here that we it's been 10 years to that judgment, but we still await the true implementation of that Supreme Court judgment. In addition to that, in 2014, in December, when there was the horrific attack on the Army Public School in Peshawar, it was the 16th of December, all the political parties came together, and on a consensus, there was a national action plan to combat extremism that was drafted and passed. Again, there were many clauses of the National Action Plan which was addressing various issues that minorities face. Again, that's something that we still need to see being enforced and implemented in the country. And last is there is a fatwa, or in English we'd probably call it a decree, by the religious Muslim clerics in the country, leading clerics who came together and formed this Pegham-e Pakistan document, which is meant to promote peace and harmony in the country, to ensure that religious minorities are respected, recognized, and awarded equal treatment. And so that's another measure that is there on a state level in the country. So I would stop over there. But these are some of the legal frameworks that are already in place, in addition to many laws within the Pakistan Penal Code itself, also, which are there to protect minorities and their rights.
Thank you so much for that, Cecil. And I think there have been some quite significant high level discussions about religious minorities over the summer, particularly in June. And this was kind of following an uptick in mob lynchings of religious minorities, particularly in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and Punjab. The Defence Minister Khwaja Asif admitted in the National Assembly that, and I quote, "No religious minority is safe in Pakistan," end quote, and that the murder of religious minorities is a, quote, "matter of concern and embarrassment," end quote. The Federal Minister for Law, Azam Nazir Torah, also lamented the decline in religious tolerance at the Justice A.R. Cornelius conference. So, what would you say are some of the most prominent challenges facing specific religious minority groups in Pakistan today?
Okay, thank you. I think I would just start by the quote that you mentioned about the two ministers. Unfortunately, number one, it's an encouragement. We are encouraged by these statements given by the ministers. Uh, but at the same time, I would say that time and again, when incidents of mob violence or horrific crimes against atrocities against religious minorities take place in the country, we often get to hear such statements coming from the ruling party or from those in power. Um, what is important is, are there any practical measures being taken to address? Those statements are great, they encourage us, they give us hope, but it will only be effective if those words are put to action and there are measures taken in place. So that's at the start of it. But just to unfortunately, again, sadly, there are so many problems that religious minorities are facing, but in the interest of time, I'll touch upon some of the most severe issues and challenges that minorities in Pakistan are facing. We would start, I think, with the widespread misuse of the blasphemy laws. We have numerous civil society organizations who are documenting data on cases of blasphemy against religious minorities, but also against the majority Muslim citizens of Pakistan. And we can clearly see from the 1984 measures that made the blasphemy laws and the punishments on the blasphemy laws more strict. we can clearly see over 1,600 cases of blasphemy that have occurred in this time, in the past four and a half decades in Pakistan's history. And that is something that is very alarming, because the constant and blatant misuse of the blasphemy laws is allowing for, or has allowed a space for mob attacks to start taking place. And in this past decade, we have seen a significant rise in mob attacks, mob lynchings of minorities, but also from members of the majority Muslim community who are now getting affected by this issue. So, I mean, to quote one of the examples, you probably are aware, last year on the 16th of August, in the city of Jaranwala, next to Faisalabad, a mob attack took place. Two brothers, Rocky and Raja Masi, were accused of blasphemy, falsely accused, because it was proven in the court later on that they had not committed any such blasphemy, and they were acquitted. However, that accusation led to a mob attack where over 21 churches and several homes were burnt, and we are all aware of that incident that occurred. We thought something would happen, after such an horrific incident takes place. But then this year, on the 25th of May, again in the city of Sargoda, we saw how this 70-year-old, over 70-year-old shoe factory owner Nazir Lazar Masi was again falsely accused of blasphemy, and the mob got together. They attacked him. They beat him with stones and iron rods and bricks. And later, 10 days later, Lazar succumbed to his injuries. So that occurred. And then a month later, on I think it was the 21st of June, where a Muslim man in the tourist valley of Sawat was accused of blasphemy and then lynched and burnt alive by the mob over there. So this is one of the most pressing challenges that we see for religious minorities, but now it's for everyone included. But we definitely can see that in blasphemy cases or accusations, the treatment that is meted out towards or against the religious minorities is more biased than it would be against their Muslim brothers and sisters in those cases, and that is something that the state needs to also address and look into. This issue has also further led to another very pressing issue, which is concerning women and girls, which is the issue of abductions, forced conversions, and forced marriages of especially Hindu and Christian women, as well as minor girls, that is, girls under the age of 18. And we, again, our partners, in fact, have recorded, our partner Center for Social Justice in Pakistan have recorded 136 cases in the year 2023 against Hindus and Christians. And may I also just mention over here that this is not the exact picture, because there are many more cases that are there, but a lot of them are not reported due to the fear from the abductors, from right wing groups, which uh, forces the victim or the victim's family to not report the atrocity that has taken place. This is again something that really needs the attention of the state, but also of society, to tackle this abuse that is constantly taking place and ruining the lives, especially of Christian and Hindu women and girls in Pakistan. Now, the third issue, which again is related with both these other issues that I mentioned, is when when the state does not take affirmative action on such situations and such abuses taking place. uh, Such groups who promote hate in society get more space. And that is why we see now the increase, or the significant increase, in hate speech and incitement to violence and hate crimes that we are witnessing. And I would like to mention over here that this incitement to violence and hate speech is more evident against the Ahmadiyya community in Pakistan, which is facing the brunt of this issue in the country. Uh, I would like to now just turn my attention to three more issues that I would like to share over here. and that one is to deal with all these issues. Is dealing is You need to look at the root causes of intolerance in Pakistan, and sadly, when you look at that very closely, we see that the root causes are lying within our formal and informal education system, within the upbringing of our future generations that is taking place. So, we have education policy and the curriculum that does not comply with the constitutional guarantees that I just alluded to earlier. Um, uh, so, when there's no compliance, then how will religious minority students be awarded equal treatment within the education system? And then you have biased and hateful content within the textbooks that are taught across schools and colleges in Pakistan, that is further breeding intolerance and a lack of recognition and respect for religious minorities or the diversity that Pakistan has to offer. We have linguistic, ethnic, religious diversity, but our textbooks are not promoting that. And so a society is being brought up with the lack of knowledge of this diversity that we have in the country. We have discriminatory practices within the education system. For example, if a Muslim student has studied the Holy Quran by heart, he or she is known as a Hafiz-e Quran. They get extra grace marks ranging from 10 to 20, depending on which province you are from, when they apply for admission in higher education to universities or even for government jobs. Non-Muslim students do not have that privilege, so they are automatically disregarded or deprived of that equal competition when they apply, because they do not have, if they have studied their own religion, be it a Hindu or a Christian or a Sikh or any other religious minority group, they are not getting those grace marks, and they are automatically discriminated against when it comes to open merit competitions when applying for admission or for government jobs. Again, non-Muslim students are given an alternative to study ethics in lieu of Islamic studies. Ethics is something that everyone should study, for that matter. Why just religious minorities? And that too, um, we find in our work that most of the schools don't have the resources to teach. They don't have a teacher to teach maybe just one or a few students who may be belonging to the minority community. So that's another challenge that we see. Now, the government over here, I'd mentioned, has planned to, from 2025, to introduce seven for religious education for seven different minority communities, which is next year. The challenge is how will that practically be implemented, and we could discuss on that later on also. Another issue is the political marginalization of minorities. We need more general seats to be awarded to minorities so that they can contest in elections and have a stronger voice in parliament. We are still awaiting the formation of the National Commission for Minorities, a promise that was made many years back. We still wait for that. And last but not least, we see within the workspace environment how certain job advertisements for menial low paying jobs, like jobs for sanitary workers and sweepers, there is stigmatization and clear cut discrimination where those jobs clearly advertise that only Christian minorities will be eligible to apply for those jobs. That again is something that the state needs to address on an urgent basis. So, those are, I think, in my view, some of the main challenges facing minorities in our country.
Thank you for that. And I think naturally then we'll turn on to what you think the solutions might be. And both of the ministers I mentioned earlier made suggestions about addressing the challenges facing religious minorities. The defence minister suggested tabling a resolution that would call on the provincial governments of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and Punjab to take measures to identify, investigate, and prosecute those involved in mob lynchings, and that the courts would ensure swift justice. The law minister talks about elevating more religious minority judges to the higher judiciary and reserving quotas for minority law officers and legal advisors. Other kind of recommended solutions to these challenges include legal and educational reform, as you've kind of touched on there, but there is often a disconnect between what the best solutions might be and the extent to which they are feasible or realistic. So I wanted to ask what solutions you think are both required and feasible in the context of Pakistan.
Sure, thanks. I appreciate those suggestions by the defense minister and the law minister. They are definitely, but like I said, tabling that resolution is important. But then the more important part is to ensure the follow up and the implementation of those resolutions or any laws or measures that are taking place. The I think one of the biggest uh, challenges for us is to ensure implementation of the existing laws. We don't Right now we don't need new laws. We just need the existing laws to be implemented, or compliance with the guarantees of the constitution also, and things will start moving in the right direction. I don't say they will get addressed, but they will start moving. And for me, when we look at this issue of mob violence, I think for me the most important part is that the first and foremost, the state, the government must accept that there are issues. Now, yes, these ministers who have said this is a point in that direction, that they're accepting that there are issues and challenges that minorities or religious minorities are facing. Because if you're going to be in denial of the issues, because we've seen in the past from the state, not this government, but the previous government, where the state denied the presence of the issue of abductions and forced conversions of Hindu and Christian girls. They tried to sort of deny that as really being an issue in Pakistan. So if you deny the presence of a particular issue, then it's only going to cause a hindrance in trying to address these issues, and you'll hit a roadblock in that respect. Number two, there needs to be a political will to address these issues on a serious and committed and sincere way. That's the next step, because it's the legislators who are going to pass laws, who are going to table resolutions. So they have to have the willingness to seriously address these issues. Another very pressing point, I think, in light of all these mob attacks that have taken place, is the rule of law has to be implemented. No one should be allowed to take the law into their own hands and dispense what they may think, or their version or interpretation of justice. Deterrence has to be created to reduce future mob attacks or violence in society against religious minorities, but also against all citizens of Pakistan. And I'd like to quote an example of UK at the moment, when just few weeks back, last month, we saw an uprising of riots taking place against anti-immigration, riots that took place. What How was that tackled? Immediately there was a deterrence created. Within a week of those riots, we saw the state, the government, take action, arrest, but not just arrest, prosecute and serve immediate sentences to those involved in rioting, regardless of which side they were from. And that is something that set a deterrence, and immediately we started to see those riots come down. In addition to that, we also witnessed a very strong participation from society that challenged those protesters, which is again something we need to see. We've got people in Pakistan who subscribe to this positive mindset, who want peace in the country, but most often they are silent and they don't raise their voice, and that does not really help. So I think that is the rule of law has to be implemented. Those people must be held accountable for the atrocities that they have, and for taking the law into their own hands. We must not allow them to go scot free. That is very important. Coming to other solutions, again, we need to be really practical about what is and what is not possible in the context of Pakistan. It's a very complex situation that Pakistan is dealing with, and I say it myself. So we need to look at smaller, low-hanging fruit, things that we can achieve in the current scenario in the country. I'll give you an example. For example, the implementation of the existing laws and the compliance with the existing guarantees, like I mentioned about, is one thing. The Child Marriage Restraint Act in Sindh was passed, but all other three provinces do not have that. Now, in Punjab, there is a debate going on for the Child Marriage Restraint Amendment Act in Punjab to be passed. I think it is very important that the government of Punjab should immediately implement this, as well as try to convince the other two provinces of Balochistan and KPK to also pass this, because by passing that, they will raise the age of marriage for both boys and girls to the age of 18, and it, to a certain extent, it may help in being able to curb the issue of abductions and forced conversions that we are constantly seeing taking place in Pakistan at the moment. So that's something that we need to focus on. Um, the Many years back, there was the Hindu marriage bill that was passed, and the rules of business, I'm told by contacts in Pakistan, that the rules of business have been formed. Yet, is the law or is the bill now applicable as a law? That's questionable. Similarly, the Sikh community have the Sikh Anand Karaj Marriage Act also, that was passed in Punjab. Again, has it been, have the rules of business been formed? Is it applicable now as a law? Again, that's a question for the state to answer. And last but not least, the Christian Marriage Act of 1872 and the Christian Divorce Act of 1869 have not been amended since then. That's close to about 140 years or more that these laws that the British had introduced at that time have not been amended. And if these laws were to be amended with the current times, they would provide some level of safeguards to the community in their personal matters when it comes to marriage or divorce or alimony or separation, and the issue of forced conversions also that we are constantly alluding to. So I think, that's something that is not controversial. It's something that is going to protect the personal interests of these communities. The state should at least start with implementing these particular laws. Then I think it's very important, where you mentioned about the law minister mentioning about reforms. Yes, we need judicial and police reforms. We need to sensitize. We need to give protection to the judges in the lower courts so that they're not intimidated by groups or extremist groups who try to put pressure on these judges when they are hearing cases of blasphemies or forced conversions. There needs to be a sensitization of judges of the lower courts, the lawyers, the police, and the security authorities on human rights, on minority rights, so that we can bring about a change from the biased and negative attitudes that is meted out against the communities from these very institutions. Um, so I think that those judicial and police reforms are absolutely necessary. Yes, I think that recommendation of bringing in more minorities into the courts as judges, appointing them as judges, is also something that is welcome. But if you create an environment of fear, who would want to come and work in that environment? Who would be willing to, when they are not guaranteed that protection? So first and foremost, we have to protect and guarantee that protection. Only then can we try and bring more minorities into the fold. Accountability, I mentioned, is important. I think another very important part is the public private partnership in tackling these challenges. The government can't work alone and address these issues. They need to be more open to take civil society on board as a partner, not as an adversary. They need to ease the process for NGOs in Pakistan to operate freely. They need to allow foreign funding so that civil society can play an effective role in helping the government in combating and overcoming these challenges. And I think, apart from political mainstreaming of minorities, something I mentioned earlier about, it has to be done. We saw in this last election that there were about over a dozen seats that were awarded to minorities on general seats, and they were able to contest elections. I think we need to build on that, and take inspiration from that, and the political parties need to build on that and mainstream minorities in the political fold. I think we need the true implementation of the Supreme Court's judgment of 2014. It's been 10 years. Again, the National Action Plan must be enforced and implemented, and the Paigam-e Pakistan should be widely disseminated amongst communities so that they understand the message. If it's not reaching out, then it's not having an effect in that context. There needs to be an emphasis on widespread messaging for the respect for human dignity, for the principles of humanity. This should be more and more inculcated in our society, because we've gone very polarized in the recent past. And last but not least, the long term solution lies by addressing the gaps and the biases within our education system, both formal and informal education, has to be complied with the guarantees of the constitution and with international commitments that Pakistan as a state has ratified, and we must ensure that we promote an air of human dignity, respect for humanity, tolerance, acceptance of diversity that Pakistan has to offer. I think that is absolutely important. We need to start from somewhere. We can't repeal the blasphemy laws right now, so it's impractical to. We can demand the repeal, but we could at least start with curbing the misuse of the laws and bring in provisions that will curb the misuse and hold those accountable who make these false accusations and ruin the lives of so many people around us. So I would just stop over there, but I would like to end over here my sharing on one particular quote that my late father, who was also a very strong voice for minorities in Pakistan, Group Captain retired Cecil Chaudhry, and he used to often quote, and I'd like to quote that because I think that should be our starting point. He used to often quote that by faith, I am a Christian, but my religion is humanity. We need to start from that point where every citizen of Pakistan is a human being and deserves equal treatment as a first class citizen of Pakistan. Thank you.
Thank you so much for ending on that very poignant quote. But I'm afraid that's all that we have time for. Special thanks to Cecil Chaudhry for joining me today to discuss the challenges facing religious minorities in Pakistan. I hope you can join us for our next episode of Experts Dispatch. Bye for now.
Thank you.